For centuries, this junction has been the centre of Britain. Not metaphorically, not approximately, but precisely, officially, and in some cases legally, the centre. Every distance across the kingdom was measured from this spot. Every map, every milestone, every reckoning of the realm's geography began here, at Charing Cross, mile zero. Today, Charing Cross is just another London railway station. Overcrowded platforms, delayed trains, expensive coffee. Tens of thousands of commuters rush past what was once one of the most significant locations in the country, and they have no idea. How does a nation forget its own centre? The answer lies in a story that spans 7 centuries, from medieval grief to Victorian ambition to modern amnesia. This is not the history of Westminster, where kings were crowned and parliaments convened, nor the City of London, where fortunes were made and lost. This is the history of a different kind of power, administrative and symbolic. The story begins not with power, but with grief. In November 1290, Eleanor of Castile, Queen Consort of England, wife of Edward I, and mother of 16 children, died at Harby in Nottinghamshire. She was 49 years old. Edward, that hammer of the Scots and ruthless subjugator of Wales, was devastated. What followed was one of the most extraordinary funeral processions in English history. Eleanor's body was embalmed, her heart removed and sent to the Dominican friars in London, the area now known as Blackfriars. Her intestines were buried at Lincoln Cathedral, and the cortege began its slow journey south to Westminster Abbey. 12 days, 150 miles. And in each place where the body rested overnight, Edward ordered the construction of an elaborate stone cross. 11 crosses, each one more magnificent than the last, soaring 30 or 40 feet into the air, decorated with statues of the Queen, heraldic symbols, and Gothic spires that spoke of piety, power, and inconsolable loss. The 12th and final cross, the tallest and most ornate, stood here, at Charing. The name Charing derives from the Old English word meaning a bend in the river. Later Romantics would claim it came from the French chère reine, or dear queen. A nice idea, but almost certainly false. By the Stuart period, Charing Cross had become the most important junction in England. Roads from the north converged here. The Strand, lined with aristocratic mansions, connected the royal court at Westminster with the mercantile power of the City of London. This was where courtiers schemed, where merchants brokered deals, where news from the provinces arrived first. The Eleanor Cross, now weathered and cracked, remained the emotional and administrative centre. Proclamations were read here, traitors' heads were displayed here, and crucially, distances across the kingdom were measured from here. London to York, 199 miles, from Charing Cross. But in the 1640s, the cross became a victim of revolution. Parliament, now in control after years of civil war, ordered its destruction. The Eleanor Cross was, they argued, a symbol of papist idolatry. All those statues, all that Gothic ornamentation. More truthfully, it was a symbol of monarchy itself, and monarchy was now suspect. The monument was taken down in 1643, and 4 years later it was destroyed. Historical documents from the time suggest some of the stone was used to pave Whitehall. The space remained empty for a generation. But after the restoration in 1660, there was an appetite for symbolic reassertion. In 1675, a new monument appeared, an equestrian statue of Charles I, the martyred king, facing down Whitehall towards the spot where he had been executed. Ironically, one royal monument destroyed, another erected in defiance. But the name persisted, Charing Cross. The centre held, even if the symbol had changed. For 2 centuries, Charing Cross remained symbolically central and physically static. Then came the railway age, that great Victorian upheaval that rewrote geography, collapsed distance, and turned Britain into a single, integrated economic organism. By the 1860s, every major railway company wanted a terminus in central London. The competition was ferocious. The South Eastern Railway, serving Kent and the South East, needed a station close to Westminster and the West End. Charing Cross was perfect. In 1864, the company demolished the old Hungerford Market, a Georgian structure that had served Londoners for decades, and built this, Charing Cross Station. This was Victorian engineering at its most confident: iron, glass, ambition. Above the platforms rose the Charing Cross Hotel, designed in the French Renaissance style. Mansard roofs, ornate facades, a statement of cosmopolitan sophistication. This was not merely infrastructure, it was theatre. It announced, Britain is modern, connected, powerful, and Charing Cross is where that modernity begins. The architect was E.M. Barry, son of Charles Barry, the architect of the Houses of Parliament. Barry, conscious of history, erected a new Eleanor Cross in the station forecourt. It wasn't merely a copy of the medieval original, it was grander, more elaborate, a Victorian fantasy of medieval England. Gothic revival filtered through imperial confidence. Critics called it pastiche, but it served a purpose. It rooted the railway age in ancient legitimacy. The cross said, this is, as it always has been, the centre. For 50 years, Charing Cross was one of the great hubs of the British Empire. Soldiers embarked here for wars in Africa and Afghanistan. Diplomats arrived here from the continent. Tourists disembarked here to see the Tower, the Abbey, and the theatres of the West End. The Station Hotel became fashionable. Oscar Wilde stayed here, as did Agatha Christie, as did countless foreign dignitaries. And officially, Charing Cross was the centre of Britain. By the 19th century, the convention of measuring road distances from London had crystallised around the Eleanor Cross, or rather, the spot where it had once stood, now marked by Charles I's statue. If a signpost read, London 53 miles, it meant 53 miles to Charing Cross. But something was happening to the very idea of Charing Cross. In the 1830s and 40s, the government cleared the slums and stables that had clustered around the old Royal Mews and created Trafalgar Square, a grand ceremonial space to commemorate Nelson's victory and Britain's naval supremacy. Nelson's column rose in 1843. The square was completed by the 1850s, and almost immediately this became the landmark that people recognised. When Londoners thought of this spot now, they thought of Trafalgar Square, the fountains, the lions, Nelson staring down from his column, not the spot directly south where the Eleanor Cross had once stood, not the Charles I statue marking mile 0. Those became footnotes, antiquarian curiosities. The original Charing Cross, the junction, the symbolic centre, the mile 0 point, was still here, technically and legally. But in the public imagination, it had been eclipsed. The place had been renamed. And the name Charing Cross migrated. It attached itself to the railway station. When people said, I'm going to Charing Cross, they increasingly meant the station, not the historic junction. The name survived, but divorced itself from its original location and meaning. On the afternoon of December 5th, 1905, part of the roof of Charing Cross Station collapsed without warning. 6 people were killed. The wrought iron arches had given way. The station was repaired, but the accident seemed symbolic. The Victorian confidence that had built this place, that belief in permanence, in centrality, was cracking. Meanwhile, Whitehall consolidated its grip as the actual seat of power. Parliament, Downing Street, the Foreign Office, the ministries. These were the institutions that governed Britain and its empire. They had always been the real centres. Charing Cross, both the historic junction and the station, was simply nearby. The West End, Piccadilly, Leicester Square, Covent Garden, became the cultural heart, the place where Londoners and tourists actually wanted to be. And Charing Cross Station became what all major stations eventually become, a transit node. Not a destination, but a place to pass through. The Underground had expanded. Embankment Station opened in 1870, eventually connecting with Charing Cross, and the station was just one point in a vast network. Commuters changed trains here without ever stepping outside, without ever seeing the Eleanor Cross replica, without ever knowing they were standing near what had once been considered the centre of Britain. The name Charing Cross persisted, but floated free, detached from its historical origin. It meant the station to most people. To others it vaguely indicated the area around Trafalgar Square. To almost no one did it mean the spot where the Eleanor Cross had once stood, the junction that marked Mile Zero. And Mile Zero itself is still there, still technically the official centre of Britain, still marked by the statue of Charles I, and still the point from which road distances are measured. Today, if you ask someone where the centre of London is, you'll receive a dozen different answers. Trafalgar Square, Piccadilly Circus, Westminster, the South Bank, the City. London, like all great cities, is polycentric now. It has no single heart. But officially, legally, the centre is still here. Charing Cross, Mile Zero, the point from which distances are measured. Edward I built his cross to mark grief and majesty. The Victorians rebuilt it to mark empire and modernity. And now? Well, now it marks nothing other than the passage of thousands of commuters who mostly don't see or think about it. But it is still here, the forgotten heart of Britain. A reminder that all centres are temporary, all empires fade, and all monuments, even those at Mile Zero, eventually become invisible.